Drinks, food, art, fun. This is Hops and Spirits Kentucky.
I hope where you are, you're getting some cooler temps because I am enjoying that so far this week. I hope they stick around, but I know that probably won't happen because it never does with Kentucky weather. You get like the season's like 10 times over all throughout. And while on our sister podcast, Bar Conversations, we jumped into Whiskey Weeks this week. We're going to wait just a little bit as we head into the hoppy world still with Princeton Hurst and Atrium Brewing out of Louisville. But before that, what's pouring around Kentucky? Some news and notes. First up, a family-owned Mexican restaurant is expanding in Lexington. El Charro Authentic Mexican Cuisine, which already has 2 locations, is opening a third streamlined addition near the University of Kentucky campus, just off South Broadway. The new El Charro Tacos and Tequila Bar at 561 South Broadway is set to open up in September. It will be where Maiden City Brewing's Bernacos was previously. The Taco and Tequila Bar will be a fast, casual concept, and customers will order at the counter, and then food and drinks will be brought to their tables. Bourbon and Beyond's culinary lineup is finally out. The festival takes place September 14th through 17th at the Highland Festival grounds at the Kentucky Exposition Center in Louisville. It will include multi-sensory opportunities showcasing America's best chefs and Louisville's bourbon culture for the world's largest bourbon and music festival. Leading the culinary demonstrations on the Monogram Culinary stage are host Chef Chris Santos of Chopped and Chef Edward Lee, the mind of a chef. They will be joined by renowned chef personalities including Louisville's own Food Network star Darnell Ferguson and Paducah, Kentucky native and Top Chef contestant Sarah Bradley, among others. The hosts of the Bourbon Experience on the Kentucky Venues Bourbon stage include bourbon expert Chris Blanford and Chef Amanda Freitag of Top Chef and Chopped. They will be joined by special guests including the world's leading bourbon authority, Fred Minnick, among others. Tickets are still available to the festival. However, those looking to go to the Kentucky Bourbon Festival in Bardstown next month will need to mark their calendars for the 2024 event as this year's festival is officially sold out. Head to their website and subscribe to their e-newsletter to stay informed on ticket release dates, festival information, and more. And for those going this year, we'll be there. We can't wait to see you and the more than 50 brands represented, all featuring Kentucky-produced bourbon. It'll be a great time. And you know what else will be great? Up next, we head to Louisville to chat with Princeton Hurst of Atrium Brewing. Enjoy.
Remember to check out Hops and Spirits on social media at Hop Spirits, all one word, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also find Hops and Spirits on YouTube and at hopspirits.com.
Joining us for our Q&A this week, he's the co-owner, president of Atrium Brewing, as we head to the hoppy side of things in Louisville. Let's welcome in Princeton Hurst.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for those that may not understand why both of us might be chuckling a little bit, this is our third attempt at this because technology is not enjoying this rainy day as we record. So I think you know what I'm going to ask you next, Princeton. So, but for those that don't know how I kind of do these things, I call this the Cliff Notes version, a little bit about yourself, but not too much because like I said, we got plenty of things to get into.
Absolutely. So third time's the charm here. I was born in Texas originally, lived in Louisville past 20 years. Out of that, I was in the Army for about 10. And then once I got out, the remainder has been kind of different ventures that I've started. And all roads have led ultimately to beer and Atrium.
Well, I was going to say it's a cool way that you've gotten there, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. But where does that entrepreneurial spirit come from? Because you've clearly done a few different things and a few different ventures, like you said.
I'd say I've always, from like a young age, I was drawn to creating, commerce, selling. I would buy candy bars and sell them at school. It's just always been fascinating to me, and really captures my interest in creating things. It's fun. It gives you purpose.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's extra fun too when you can then put that in with maybe a love of craft beer and kind of go that route with a few of the things you've done. But where does that love of craft beer come from, and how did you get into it?
Yeah, that's started at the legal drinking age, back when I was 21. I was young in the Army. We'd work hard, play hard, live that whole philosophy out, and we we would go to bars, and me and one of my really good friends, we're just never drawn to doing shots or drinking, macro beers. It was we found Belgian beers, and it wasn't nearly as prevalent as it is today at that time, and just realized like we really loved it, and started seeking it out. I think actually delirium tremens, that was the first one I had. I was like, this isn't beer, this is something completely else, and it just opened up my eyes to it. And then from there it was really just kind of a fun game and pursuit, to try to find different beers that no one has ever heard of, and try them, and it was an experience.
Well, and I'm guessing that's probably what led you then to one of your ventures. And I've talked to the who runs it nowadays and owns it. Chris Williams there at Four Pegs is an awesome dude. But that was y'all's originally, kind of before that. How did that come about, and how were you originally part of Four Pegs back in the day?
uh, it's kind of a crazy story. uh, I was actually doing I was renovating houses, flipping houses, in the area, and the broker that was also a real estate agent as well. And the broker that I was with knew that I was looking for. I was interested in starting a beer bar, at the time, because I was still heavy on this seeking out the best beer, and I was like, if I have my own bar, then I could just get everything. It was my thought process.
Not a bad
And
thought process.
exactly, I was like, oh, it's easy. Um, but our broker, actually, he knew that I was on the how we discussed it. And he was like, hey, I've got an opportunity for you. This place hasn't been open that long, and the guy's willing to sell. And signed an NDA, found out what it was. I was like, oh, that's one of the best. Like, they actually have some of the best bottles in in the city. So a couple months of a lot of paperwork and figuring things out. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, yes, let's do it. Let's dive in. And so I purchased Four Pegs, and yeah, that's how that came to be.
Well, and then obviously at some point you guys decided to kind of switch gears and go from maybe being a craft beer bar to making the beer. When did that kind of process happen that you guys decided to move on from Four Pegs and go in a different route?
um, another fun story of how we came together. So at the time, we were buying a lot of beer. We were the number one founders account in Kentucky. Really just trying to push craft beers as much as possible, and really trying to bring in um, some really good brands that weren't as accessible. Um, Evil Twin, I was always a fanboy of Evil Twin. But after so much time, I was like, it's fun buying other people's product. I was like, but you really have limited control as far as what you're getting based on what's being offered in the market, what other people create. And out of nowhere, I was just like, well, what if I could make beer and control what goes out in the market? I was like, that's kind of the next step naturally. Easier said than done, because I maybe I personally brewed one time on one of those little kits, and it turned out terribly. So
I about ruined an oven doing that because I didn't have a big enough pot. Smelled like hops for days.
oh, it's terrible. It's like my wife's like, "What are you doing?"
Hmm.
um, but I had a lot of friends in the industry, reps and beer reps, because we had a really close relationship, buying beer. And one of those reps, I kind of popped the idea to him. He was a good friend of mine. I was like, "Do you know any guys that like want to brew and start a brewery?" And he's like, "Actually, I do. You want to go over to his house right now?" I was like, "Okay, sure." So that's how I met my business partner now, Mark Rubenstein. and we went over to his house. He had some home brews. It was a milkshake IPA. It's like, here, try it. And I was like, that is fantastic. I was like, can you do that? Like, but bigger. He's like, I don't know. So that's really where the conversation started. And then Spencer, our head brewer, he was actually working for Heidelberg at the time. Um, this is when the initial conversation started, and he was like, "Hey guys, I heard you want to start a brewery," and he was just doing home brewing, and brought some samples, and we had a powwow, and we're like, "It's gonna be a while, but we definitely want you part of the team." Lo and behold, we didn't know it'd take over 2 years to get everything in place, and so Spencer, part of the story, he went to Akasha, took a job at Akasha brewing for them in the interim, and ultimately, by the time we opened, he was like, "Hey guys, like, can we do this thing now?"
He was getting a little antsy, and
Yeah.
which is okay, because I think what people don't realize too is it's not as simple. There's a lot of laws you got to go through, a lot of different things, and so forth. And what was it like building out that plan for Atrium? Because it's like you said, it wasn't as simple or a straight path as one might hope, especially with everything that decided to pop up during that time.
Oh gosh, yeah. I guess the best way to put it is I learned real quick to expect the unexpected and have to change plans frequently to make things work for the time being. Because it's like you think about it, you fantasize about it, you start putting it on paper. It sounds great, and then you get into the details, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna scrap that and start all over. So it's but when you finally get to the end result, it's you're like, okay, I think everything works. That's a really good feeling. But then you have to test it in real life. And then you're like, okay, we need to maybe move things around or reconfigure. So it's definitely a moving target.
And the name, was that an easy thing for y'all to settle on? How did you come up with it? Because I've heard so many stories from folks that have worked with brand people, and they're like, "I hate that name. I hate that name." Okay, we'll go with that too. They're just sitting around. Someone says the right word, and they're like, "Aha!" After going through a year's worth of names, how was it for y'all on coming up with Atrium?
It was extremely challenging, like, and that's an understatement. Um, uh, Most people don't know the story behind the name. Um, we had focus groups. We were pretty much we had a deadline to follow our LLC, and I wanted to know what direction we were going to file the paperwork. I was like, we could do a DBA, but we can get in it. We have like 6 months. We can get a name surely. We did focus groups. We would have parties, have people over, like what with homebrew, and we went so many different avenues, and nothing stuck. Or there's something that was too similar to it, or copyright infringement, you name it. Um, I I remember we are like 3 days away. I was like, we've got to come up with a name. Like, we absolutely need a name. And I was in my living room, and I had all these flashcards everywhere still trying to figure out the name. And I was looking at the original design plans that we had down for the build out. And again, everything changes. The original plans, we had the top floor cut out with to look like an atrium with like games and plants hanging down to the first floor. And I just remember looking at that. I was like, that's an atrium. I was like, wait, atrium. That doesn't. I was like, yeah, if we're gonna have an atrium, we could be atrium. And then ran it across everybody. They're like, sounds good. Let's go with it. Let's go with it. And so the name stuck. The actual atrium build out did not.
Any hopes of having that happen somewhere down the road?
The closest thing that I say we've gotten to it, which I'm very happy about, was our newest location. We have a mezzanine that has an atrium-esque feel to it.
There
Don't
you
know
go.
if that counts as a Atrium-esque as a word, but I'll go with
Hey,
it.
hey, I mean, the beer world, I've seen enough names. You can call it whatever you need to get there. And you mentioned, kind of the original spot, the Logan Street spot. How did you guys come upon that, and how did that kind of fit into y'all's vision?
Um, Similar to the name, we were looking. It, it's really hard because Rubo, my business partner, and myself, we never had any experience on a commercial uh, brewing, which is completely different. So just understanding the space, we looked at so many different spaces, and we're trying to imagine from like conceptually on paper what we needed and also what we needed for taproom needs. This led to two bigger properties that we're looking at, two small, all across the board. And I actually lived right down the street from where we're at right now. And I saw this building, the building that we're in here at Logan Street, come up for sale. And I kept on looking at it and looking at like some other similar breweries and setups. And the more I looked at it, I was like, I think this just might work. And I might have been biased because I was living the neighborhood. Um, but after just looking at it, it was operating as a bar, kind of a dive bar to Yetis at the time, and it was really difficult to understand the scope of the building because the way that it was at that time laid out, and there was still in operation, but after a lot of architects and chats and a little bit of money there, we realized we're like, this is a great option. We can absolutely make this work. And for me, it was great because it's in an area that I personally have a lot of involvement with. I mean, Four Pegs was right down the street from us here too, as well. So it kind of was a win-win for me. Not to mention I was banking on the building being all brick, just from historical photos. And I was like, that'd be great if we could bring back some of that character, to a really old building that's been here in a cornerstone in the area for a long time.
Well, and since you guys opened in 2020 there, you've now expanded, like you said, to where you have the Atrium-esque spot of the Norton Commons. And what led you guys to one expand in, just a few years and then go over to Norton Commons?
Really, we found, first of all, like a lot of people responded. We can't be grateful enough for the support, especially with us opening during COVID, and just the response from Louisville and anybody that came to our tap room. We realized that there was kind of a disconnect as far as uh, people in other parts further away in Louisville, and that it was kind of a drop off where like people were saying, "Hey, I wish you had a tap room closer, to this area." We're like, "Oh, I get that." They're like, "We come by after work, pick up beer, but we can't ever hang around and have an experience." And looking at the maps, and I was like, "Okay, that makes sense." So after a lot of discussions, and kind of pulling out of the COVID era, um, we looked at like what made the most sense for who we are, and a big part of us is, you know, being a neighborhood brewery. Granted, we sell our beer all over the city, but that's really important. And one thing is walkable neighborhoods. You see people walking their dogs a lot around here. People they like to walk, like uh, live, work, play type feel. And Norton Commons really fit the bill for that. Just on the other end of town. So just kind of made sense to for us, and people seemed really excited about the thought of that happening. So we decided to pull the trigger.
Well, and obviously the one reason you're able to do that is because you guys make some pretty good beer, and folks have enjoyed that. And I feel like y'all have an interesting, like, selection because you got a wide range of beers. You've got like the milkshake IPAs and IPAs, and then you go into that world of sours and things like that, all the way down to the Belgian style, like the traditional style. And it's kind of like, why go with that wide of range and have that many options?
That's a great question. And I think that's the answer to this is really, I think, the driving force for everything that we make. Um, we realize, I guess, kind of like my original experience with beer. I realized beer is not one thing. I mean, beer is such a multifaceted. There's so many directions. I mean, it's kind of like cooking. It's you can make a sandwich a million different ways. And that's the fun part. We realized that we wanted to change people's, if we could, we wanted to give people a reason to like beer. And we know that like everyone's palate, there's certain styles I personally don't care for as much, and that's how everyone is. But if we could find a beer and make it the best it possibly can for that style or what direction we're going for, we're hopefully, our goal is to bring more beer drinkers and lovers that might not realize they even like beer because they haven't had the right one. So we're like, if we just hit across the board, hopefully there's a beer for everyone. So
Well, and I think you're doing that, and I love this conversation too because it leads perfectly into my next question because I've thought about this before. Where if you think about how people got into beers, like how you got into beer was a Belgian, I got into it, with just kind of traditional, lagers that local guys were brewing, and nowadays it could be a chocolate cheesecake, strawberry, sour, and to me that's kind of where maybe that the series that I love that you guys do is the Boys series, where you have something. How did that come up, and was it a fun name, simple name? Like how did you guys create that?
that was actually a fun process how that came together. So one of the problems we had when we first opened is that we were running out of beer. So
Good problem, but not a good not the problem you
good
want.
problem, yeah. So takes a little time for course correction, but again, we were hitting the ground running. And one of the first beers was Spencer, our head brewer. He was it's like these kettle sours. He's like, I can make this really good and a really good turn time. I was like, well, that's good because that's what we need right now. And I didn't really know how well sours would respond. I know it's at the time it was a growing market, but I mean, not just, I feel like in just 2 years it's really exploded. Um, but ever since that first one, people responded really well to sours, and we're like, well, let's just make this a whole uh, pretty much core competency of our production and branding. And tried to realize, we were like, well, what is that? How are we going to brand this? How are we going to market this? So it was actually Spencer likes to doodle. He's a very energetic guy. And he was doing some of these doodles, and he drew out this doodle. Was like boy, and our creative director was like, "Can you draw that again?" He's like, "I think that's it." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." He's like, "Can you just like make these, emphasize these letters?" And we all looked at it, we're like, "Okay, that's it. That's it. That's where our sour series is the boy series," and we just kind of never looked back from there.
Well, and you've had a few variations, and I'm guessing too that's fun too to just see what, not what you're throwing at the wall to see, but the cool flavor combinations that you can kind of make and take people back to the days of maybe a grandma's cherry pie or whatever.
Yeah, it's I think for the brewers, the whole production staff, it's kind of become this fun challenge. Like, I bet you can't do this, or can we, like, beer, we were like, can we make a beer green without adding food coloring? We're like, it was a challenge. And the biggest thing that I love about our team is that some of the stuff sounds really silly, and it is, but they treat it the same way that they would, a fine pilsner. Like, they treat it with the same care and attention, to make it the best product, even if it's a lemon parfait sour. It's uh but yeah, it's I think it's a lot of fun because, I mean, the options are limitless as long as you can create a recipe and see it through. You can really do anything.
Well, and so far you guys have done a really cool job on that series, and I love it. And when folks get to visit the tap rooms, whether that's the Logan Street one or the Norton Commons one, what can they expect when they come for a visit?
Yeah, we have 20 taps at both locations. We just added, actually, slushies this year to Logan Street, and coming soon to Norton Commons, beer slushies, which, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't want to like them, but I was like, this is ridiculous.
Well, I'm sure it's been good handy with the temps that we had there for a little
Oh,
while.
absolutely, absolutely. It's definitely slushy weather. Um, but yeah, we offer, again, it's a rotating draft board. We do have cores that stay on, our Kolsch, our Steep Hill IPA, Berry Boy, Velcro Sneakers, Amber Lager, and then we are about to officially launch a new core this month. It's a light lager called Tucky. So that's about to drop. But we have all of our cores on draft at both tap rooms. Limited service bar, so we do have booze and cocktails. And then patio at Logan Street, and we have outdoor seating at Norton Commons with picnic tables, dog friendly. We have food at both locations at Logan Street. We have a permanent food truck on our patio for our food partner, Derek's, which is it's been a lot of fun working with him. And at Norton Commons, we've partnered with Watch Hill for a small bite menu called Hop and Hill.
Nice. I like that. That's a clever combo there at Norton, and clearly you guys have been able to expand and do stuff and make things happen in kind of a short time, and you're coming up on 3 years this fall, or is it 3 or 4? 3?
3 years. 3 years.
Yeah.
September 25th.
So what's next for y'all, and what's kind of the hope as you guys move into to the future?
Great question.
But nothing like putting you on the spot, right?
No. It's it's we never really know, kind of like our beers. We don't know where the market's going to go. We don't know what style is going to go. So it's kind of evolving. Our goals ultimately would be to expand in the future to a newer production facility, and really have the capabilities to get our beer out and package out into the world, and have a little bit more of a presence there, because we are currently on a 10-barrel system with quite a few 20-barrel fermenters. But for the variety of beer that we do, we're and changing it out, that only goes so far, because they're constantly being swapped out for a new brand. So but ultimately, I'd say that's for us, that's really our end goal, is to just get as much beer and not change and not innovate. Pretty much always, I want people to always look forward to a new beer that we're putting out, and also enjoy, our cores as well, because we're really proud about those. Especially our Kolsch. That was the first beer that we made. We actually entered that
first year we entered beers into a GABF competition. So fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes.
Well, it sounds like you guys have a bright future ahead, and like I said, never hurts when you're making some good beer as well. And Princeton, I appreciate you taking some time working through some technical difficulties and sharing y'all's story with me.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me.
Find more from Hops and Spirits at hopspirits.com.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.